And you think Fauci's inaction is ultimately because he's been involved in all of this for the last 30 years, and he just sees that if you go down that rabbit hole, it can't turn out well for him because this will be uncovered. And so for him, it's better just to move forward with the response that they've given. We're going to go down this path and not address it.
Well, we know something about what's going on in Fauci's mind and his colleagues because of a very important meeting that took place on the 1st of February 2020. Saturday, the 1st of February 2020, at the behest mainly, I think, of Jeremy Farrar, the head of the Wellcome Trust. He contacted Fauci in America and said, look, I've talked to 3 virologists who are quite worried about this virus. They've had a look at its genome, and there's a feature in it that implies that it might have been manipulated in a lab. We need to get on the phone and talk about this. They had that meeting, they talked about it, they sent each other emails afterwards, which we've now seen, some of at least, which say we're still worried. You know, we haven't completely got rid of our worry here. But on the 7th of February, the end of that week, the Friday, news broke that a Chinese university had found a virus that was 99% the same as SARS-CoV-2 in a pangolin, in a smuggled scaly anteater. And they announced this at a press conference, and Fauci and Farrar and Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, sort of say, oh, phew, that's a relief, because obviously what's happened is that pangolins are on sale in the seafood market. That's how it happened. Case closed. We don't need to worry about the lab anymore. And they go ahead and prepare this proximal origin paper that says which mentions the pangolin as being one of the reasons for dropping this theory. Well, there's 3 problems with this. The first is that there were no pangolins for sale in the seafood market. These 2 infected pangolins that they were talking about in southern China were, Guangxi, down near Hong Kong, completely different part of China. And as far as we can tell, no pangolins have ever been sold in that market. The second is that it wasn't 99% the same. It was 90%. So it's a way distant cousin of this virus. It's not the same virus at all. It's a red herring, essentially. The third is that the papers that, and by the way, we found that out in late February 2020 when they finally published papers about this pangolin virus. Those papers turn out to be a right mess. They're clearly sort of political papers in the sense that 2 of them use the same data set but under different labels to try and imply there's more data than there is. Things like that. It's a real mess, the papers. And they have to be withdrawn later from the journals, or at least corrected in one case. But the third problem is that the pangolin virus doesn't have the feature in it that alarmed the scientists before the meeting. The feature, and this I'm afraid is a bit technical, but it's a really important point, and it's a point we haven't talked about yet, but it's by far the most interesting and worrying feature. There's a thing called a furin cleavage site. And SARS-CoV-2 has a furin cleavage site. And this is a little feature in the middle of its spike gene that enables it to attract the attention of a human enzyme that splits the protein and primes it for infecting other cells. It makes it way more infectious. If it didn't have this feature, we wouldn't be having a pandemic. Now, no other sarbecovirus in the world has ever shown up with a furin cleavage site. SARS didn't have it. RATG13 didn't have it. The louse virus didn't have it. The pangolin virus didn't have it. They found other ones in bats that are not so closely related. None of them have it. In their proximal origin paper, the scientists say, well, we'll probably find one in a wild bat virus. 3 years, we still haven't found one, right? We know of hundreds, probably 300 now, sarbecoviruses. Not one has a furin cleavage site in it. Now, this is not just a mutation. This is an addition of 12 base pairs, 12 letters of text into the middle of the spike gene. So it's a big insertion. And it is an insertion because you can tell that the sequences all match up perfectly until suddenly there's this extra bit in there. Now, so what? Maybe it got it some way. We know that inside the bat, a furin cleavage site is a disadvantage, not an advantage. It's selected against. In bat tissues, it doesn't help, and the virus if they have one, they tend to get rid of it, funnily enough. But we also know that it's a hugely helpful thing inside a human being, for the virus, not for us. About 10 years ago, scientists started putting furin cleavage sites deliberately into viruses as a way of making them easier to grow in the lab or to test their infectivity or something. And some of these experiments were very harmless because they were doing it into individual proteins, not the whole live virus. But eventually they started doing it in live viruses too. They did it to a MERS-like virus in Wuhan with Xi Zhengli's lab involved just a few years ago. So the knowledge of how to put a furin cleavage site is there and has been used in Wuhan as well as in other places in the world. So it's not stupid to think that someone might have thought, let's try putting a furin cleavage site into this newly discovered Zika virus and see what effect it has. And then we find a document. We found this in September 2021, and it's probably the most important document we've come across. It's called the Defuse Proposal. It was a grant application from the EcoHealth Alliance under Peter Daszak's name to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Program Agency of the Pentagon, for $14 million in 2018, the purpose of which was to continue the work with Wuhan on these SARS-like viruses, to find more SARS-like viruses, to investigate them, and to put furin cleavage sites into some of them. If they found a novel SARS-like virus that wasn't particularly closely related to SARS, remember SARS at the time was the only one they thought was dangerous, so they think, this is a slightly safer one, we will consider putting human-specific proteolytic cleavage sites into them. Now, that's a furin cleavage site, right? So, thanks, Peter Daszak, for not telling us that 2 years before the pandemic broke out, you applied to the US government for money to put a furin cleavage site into a SARS-like virus for the first time. Now, it didn't get funded. DARPA turned it down. So they're saying, well, so it's not relevant. And we're saying, well, hang on. We all know scientists quite often apply for grants for things they've already started doing. We all know that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was getting far more money from the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Why wouldn't they have said, well, DARPA didn't fund it, but we'll just go ahead and do it anyway? So that's not much defense. There's a lovely analogy that Alina came up with here, which is that when they first described the genome of SARS-CoV-2 in January 2020, they deliberately omitted mentioning the furin cleavage site. They showed a chart of the first half of the spike gene, but they cut it short, just where the furin cleavage site would have shown up. And there's plenty of room in the diagram on the page in Nature to have fitted it in, but they didn't. They cut it short. And they didn't mention it. And Alina says this is like finding a unicorn. The first Zika virus with a furin cleavage site. Wow. And you describe the unicorn. You say it's got lovely hooves, it's got a mane, it's got a tail, it's got fur, it's got a white stripe on its face, but you don't mention the horn, right? And then a year and a half later, a document turns up, which is a proposal to put a horn on a horse in Wuhan.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.